Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. It's the NBA Draft Show here on a Tuesday. Today, we're going to talk about Darryn Peterson and the continuing injuries that bother him and whether or not that will impact the number one overall pick race. We are going to talk about the point guard class around him, which looks absolutely spectacular across college basketball right now. And then finally, Bryce has a little project for us that we're going to talk through and that he's going to introduce. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What is this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? How are you? Hope you're doing well. A crazy Saturday of college. I shouldn't say it was crazy. A major day of college basketball on Saturday, which of course was the busiest Saturday of my real life as a parent, as my daughter had 2 games. My son had 3 games. I had to coach 2 games that weren't my son's games because I can't coach my son's team because him and I get in fights because I'm a jerk dad that's too hard on him. So I had to catch up this morning, I guess is my point of all of this. But a great day of college hoops, a great Saturday.
Yeah, look, I caught up a little bit the next day as well, right? Like that was the right way for me to go about it because, you know, as we mentioned on the Monday show, I'm still getting over being sick a little bit as of the time of this recording. So, watched a few games on Saturday late and then watched a couple games Sunday morning and kind of got through some stuff. Good news is that the Game Theory Substack is going to be well populated this week. Even though last week we only had 2 videos, in large part because I got very ill. This week, I can already promise you, I've got Darryn Peterson queued up. That went up, I think, on Monday. We have got Darius Acuff that's going live today on Tuesday, basically at the same time as this show will go live. And then Wednesday, I will probably have Pat Gungba. I kind of just want to dive in and see exactly what is going on there because I'm intrigued by the ideas that I've seen. I'm intrigued by the rim protection and passing combination. I don't know that it fully works in a singular bucket quite yet for me, but you know, he's definitely going to be a first round. Like I feel barring injury, I should say, because he's a guy that had a lot of foot injuries in high school and we will see what that looks like long-term whenever he goes through the combine medical testing. As long as that comes back clean, he's probably going to be like a top 25, top 20 pick at least. So we'll go through that and we'll talk about Pat Gungba on the Game Theory Substack channel, GameTheorySamV.substack.com. Go there, subscribe. You will get draft breakdowns until your heart is content. Also going to do some Wizards stuff later in the week, I think, because I just watched a lot of Wizards games and I have thoughts on the Wizards at a certain point that I feel like I probably just want to put up on the Substack channel as we talked about on the Monday show. So GameTheorySamV.substack.com. Okay, Bryce, the first thing I want to talk about though is this Darryn Peterson thing that continues to happen. So Darryn Peterson had dealt with a hamstring injury early in the season. He then left the NC State game late with what Bill Self referred to as, quote, not the hamstring, quad cramps is what he said. And I've just got like a number of Bill Self quotes here that I'll read in a second, just like the timeline of what he says when he says it. Then on Saturday, Darryn Peterson plays, I believe, like 23 minutes or so.
Yeah. Something like that.
He ends up going for 26 points, 6 rebounds, 1 assist in those 23 minutes. 18 of those minutes come in the first half. 5 of those minutes come in the second half. He does not play the final 11 minutes of this game against UCF. Kansas ends up losing to UCF by 6 here. in what was a very tight game late. And I do just kind of want to read through exactly where this was. So, Bill Self 2 weeks ago. I have no idea how he's doing. This is immediately after the NC State game. I think like 2 days after. I have no idea how he's doing. Obviously, he had some not hamstring, but some quad cramping. You guys saw the game. It was evident that he was not moving at the pace that he's got to move at the way people are going to guard him. So it was obviously bothering him. I will say I agree with that. I broke down not the NC State game, but the Missouri game where he played even better. And my immediate reaction was he's not moving the way that we've seen Darryn Peterson move previously in high school. That's the reality of the situation. And I didn't think he looked completely healthy when he was playing. Then Bill Self immediately after the Davidson game, which was a little over a week ago. I think he's doing well. They've made a decision that they want him to be as close to 100% as possible when he comes back. He will be. I wish he could have played tonight. The follow-up question was, who do you mean by they? Bill Self says his family. The thing about it is that we talked about this. We're in agreement with the family that he should not play until he feels good, but I'm not inside his head. I'm not inside his body on if he feels good enough or not, but he wants to be out there. He's just not quite ready. Then Bill Self, before the game on Saturday against UCF, Darren's practiced the same as before, but it's at a little bit of a different level now as far as his explosiveness. So unless something unforeseen happens, we should have our full complement of guys heading into Saturday. Then after the game on Saturday, we wanted him to be on a minutes restriction in the first half. It was hard to do when Melvin Council has fouls and Elmarco Jackson's knee is hurt. So we didn't really have anyone to put in there. He kept us in there in the first half. Then in the second half, he started out fine, and then it started bothering him. I assume he means the hamstring, leg, whatever we're calling this injury now. We expected something like that to happen, but we were hoping it would be a situation where I could control it better by minimizing his minutes in the first half. Then he said, I think a lot just depends on his legs and how he feels. Then he got a follow-up question and he said, it's going to be on how he feels and everything. I thought he did great. He was there for a stretch in the first half, a different Darryn than what we've seen. The reason he hasn't played is that he hasn't been that explosive and has been a little rusty. But I actually thought he looked pretty darn good. But that's a concern, or that's been a concern, that his legs feel differently in the second half. A lot of that, I think, today was that if I could have played him less in the first half, he would have been more available in the second half. I think the answer is yes. Okay. So when I read through all of those things, to me, it sounds like the injury is pretty legit and that he is just a player that is probably coming back from a hamstring injury that was somewhat serious, that he tried to play through for a minute. And he's getting some like other ancillary things that are happening with his leg, like the quad cramping as he tries to come back. And that he's still just trying to get his legs back underneath him and that he didn't feel right in the second half. Now, like, is there a point where he could push through this? Maybe, I guess. But like, you're Darryn Peterson. You're going to be a top 3 pick in the draft. I don't know why you'd risk significant injury. I would imagine that the family, Kansas's medical staff, has been counseled that there might be some future potential. I don't know that, but like, is there some future potential for making this worse? I don't know. But the thing that I struggle with is that all of the intel I've ever gotten on Darryn Peterson is that like the family is involved with Darryn. That's a real point that I've gotten. Like that's always been a thing. But B, that he's like a competitor is the thing. Like he is a dude that once he gets on the court, like he wants to be there. Like he wants to be out there with his teammates. He wants to be as aggressive as possible. Like he wants to win as much as anything. And that was before this year, like at the stops where he was at previously. So I think that what I'm struggling with this is like, there seems to be this narrative out there with Kansas people that, oh my God, like, what are we doing? Like, how is this happening? Like the family has too much control. Bill Self's lost control of this thing. you know, it's just a different era, first and foremost, where players just have more power. If you guys don't think that, NBA players don't have power on when they play, you guys are just out of your minds, first and foremost. They absolutely do. The second, I guess my question to you, you can address everything that I just said at the top here, but like, how does this impact the number one overall pick race? I guess is like, for our purposes, the more intriguing discussion, because when I watch AJ Demancey like gets better every time I watch him play. I feel like, not every time, but like, I think we've seen real growth from November 5th to now January 5th, right? Over those 2 months. Like, I think AJ has gotten better in terms of pace of play. I think his handle is still a little bit wonky, but like, he understands now how to like manage around that while that skill level improvement kind of comes down the road and down the track a little bit. The game is slowing down for him. He's passing better. I think he's understanding where help defenses are coming from a little bit better. Cam Boozer is obviously incredibly productive and continues to, be the most productive and, indispensable player in college basketball. Where does Darryn fit into this conversation now? Just because he hasn't played, even though I think coming into the year for most people, he was the guy that was considered the number one guy.
Yeah, so that's where, this is just so different from me than it was even 5 years ago, Sam. So when I was a kid, so for those who don't know, like, I grew up a KU fan. Like, when I say fan, like a fan, like in the every sense of the word of a fanatic. I cried when they lost whenever I was a little kid. And then, I went and played college basketball, obviously somewhere that wasn't Kansas, and that kind of changes how you feel about things. But my family are KU fans. My best friend who you've met is a KU fan. We were actually texting about this. Shout out, Chris. So
I bet Chris is losing his mind right now about the Darryn Peterson thing.
Chris is losing his mind and would not like the beginning of this episode so far, because Chris is very much a fan and God love him. I love him to death. But so my thing is, my whole point there was like, I don't watch college basketball from that perspective anymore. Like, I don't care from a KU perspective whether Darryn Peterson plays or not. So it's fully from a draft perspective. And that's where I was this morning. So like I said, I needed to catch up on games. I downloaded 4 or 5 games of different prospects that I wanted to watch. KU was at the top of the list because I'm like, okay, I get to watch Darryn Peterson. Because Sam, I wasn't as high on you as Darryn Peterson coming into the year. I was a little bit lower. I had a little bit more questions.
Yeah, you had AJ at 1.
I still do have AJ at 1. And part of that is because, listen, we don't need to get into the Cam. Well, we're going to get into the Cam Boozer thing later, so we can do that then. But it's like, I haven't seen enough from Darryn just in terms of the minutes. Like, here's the crazy thing. The raw numbers are insane still. Like, the shooting percentages are silly. Like, all of it's incredible. And so what I'm struggling with is, you can answer me this, because I think these are the 2 main questions. And to be fair, Chris actually brought up kind of both of these in a very reasonable way. And they were things that were on my mind. One, is there any sort of medical concern out of this whatsoever? Is this just like a isolated hamstring?
Let's take these one by one.
Okay, let's take it. Because is there something with his lower body, his makeup, his biomechanics, and we don't know that, but I do wonder, or is this just simply hamstring and either hasn't rehabbed it correctly? I would not put that on him, or has tried to come back too soon, or whatever. Like, so that's one question. So we can tackle that one first.
So my answer to that would be, we'll see when he goes through medicals at the combine.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like, this is not an answer we need now. It's just an answer that we can find out in the future. As far as I know, there's no long-term thing, but that's not to say that I have all the information. I certainly would argue that I don't have all the information right now. But that's an answer we'll find out. For our perspective, again, for Kansas fans, they're probably losing their minds right now, wondering, like, is he going to play? Like, what's this going to be? But to me, we can find out that information at the combine. Like, he has to go through medical testing now because it is mandated by the collective bargaining agreement to do so. So we'll find out that answer.
The other one then is there anything, and you already touched on this a little bit, is there any concerns in terms of Is he setting himself out? Is his family setting? Because we know this has come up in multiple players over the last couple of drafts in terms of those around them. So is there any worries about those around him? His competitiveness? Is he shutting himself down, quote unquote, or anything like that? Again, I'm not trying to say there is. I'm just trying to think of the two questions around this situation.
So here'd be my answer to that. He wouldn't keep trying to come back if that was the case. You know what I mean? Like, I think he would have shut this down already. Like, I think that after the NC State game where he dropped 17 points and after the Missouri game where he dropped 17 points and, you know, we've seen him drop 20s in the first two games, right? Like, I don't think he would keep trying to come back if this was the case. You know what I mean? So to me, I think again, everything that I know about the kid is that he's very competitive and that like he wants to try and win. He wants to try and be out there for his teammates and he cares about that. So, you know, I think that I'm taking this as a very legitimate injury. And, you know, we know just from past of dealing with like NBA guys that injure their hamstrings, hamstring injuries suck. They take time to come back from. There can always be like these little like weird offshoot things that happen with hamstring injuries. Basketball is a very dynamic game. And again, like, so this is where I want to ask you, having watched the tape on the UCF game now, like, I still don't think he looks like the dynamic athlete that we saw at lower levels.
Okay, so don't take this wrong. I hope not. Like, is that like...
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I hope not. Like, I hope he's not 100%, because if he is, I worry a little bit about him being dynamic athletically enough to be the level of prospect we're talking about him being.
No,
is that fair?
So this is totally. So this is what I would say watching Darryn Peterson right now. I thought that like in terms of getting to his top speed, I thought that like he could do that yesterday. I thought that he could not at all slow down yesterday. And I thought that his deceleration, and if you think about the hamstring and where it's situated, like you're putting a lot of force through your hamstring a lot of the time in order to decelerate in those moments. I thought that he couldn't really decelerate in the way that we've seen him decelerate at lower levels. And I thought you saw that in the way that he played in ball screens, in the way that I didn't really think he got very many paint touches yesterday against UCF. I thought this game was largely on the back of the fact that he went 5 for 10 from 3 and then got fouled a couple of times in advantageous situations. One particularly near the end of the half where like he wasn't really driving to the rim. It was just like he got fouled, right? So he did like have a dunk on UCF, just like a terrible zone possession, and it was like a total throwaway where they just completely lost track of him behind the defense, and he got a lob. He had another like one-hand gather layup that I thought was pretty impressive, but like didn't really have to change speeds at all to be able to do that. He just kind of turned the corner and went. I just don't think I see the deceleration that we've seen from him at lower levels where like when you watched him, he was very herky jerky. He was very capable of like changing speeds and getting into different spots by decelerating, accelerating at variable times, using the threat of his shot at all times by playing off of 2 feet in order to keep defenses honest, right? And I don't think we've seen that at all from Darryn this year. And again, based off of everything that Bill Self has said, in my opinion, that makes sense. Like that totally makes sense to me because Bill Self has said that he's just like not 100%. And here's the other thing too, that I think really got lost yesterday when he played 18 minutes in the first half and then played 5 in the second half and then didn't play the last 11 minutes. Yes, I think that, and Bill Self said there was a minutes restriction, right? I think that you can look at it and go, Bill probably thought he had more minutes to give than what he had, right? So I think that that's probably true. But I do think the fact that Melvin Council had 2 fouls in the first, 5 minutes of that game or whatever, and Bill, by and large, sticks to the fact that like he doesn't really play guys all that often with 2 fouls in the first half. I think that made Bill play Peterson more in the first half than what he was expecting. Now, I'm not going to sit here and make the case that I think that, Bill didn't expect after that point to have Darryn for more minutes than what he had him for in the second half, where he only had him for 5. But I do think that I take Bill at his word that he kind of got caught up in the moment where Council had 2 fouls and he just kind of played Darryn in order to keep them in the game, because UCF was attacking them and was like aggressively destroying them on defense. And they needed firepower to be able to even keep in the game, to be able to play Darryn potentially in the second half.
Well, and that's a good point to mention as well. Like, make sure we don't take anything away from UCF. UCF was leading most of this game, even when Peterson was playing. And that's not an indictment of Peterson, just like of the situation. I do think that's an important context of this, because this is where I've struggled all morning after watching the game and then thinking about, discussing it was, okay, I respect Bill Self as one of the best coaches in college basketball.
I think Bill Self is the best coach in college basketball, to be abundantly clear.
And so the thing is, like, who am I to question how he handled a minutes restriction? But listen, I had hindsight because I already knew what happened before I watched the game today. But I was watching the end of the first half, and there was a couple situations where it's like, man, why did nobody on that staff tap Bill on the side and say, hey, we can get Darryn out? Wait, we're within 2 right now. Let's sacrifice these final 2 minutes of the first half. Or, you know what I mean? Like, because maybe those final 2 minutes there, that gets us 5 minutes at the end of the game or something like that, right? Like, so, and maybe they just haven't been in the situation enough to have thought through it enough. To your point, maybe it was like, Darryn's just going to tell us whenever it's starting to fill or whatever. Here's the other point I want to make real quick. I think how short the college basketball season is makes this seem even worse. Like, Aaron Gordon just missed, and I'm not saying their hamstring injuries are the same. We don't know that. Aaron Gordon missed 4 weeks, 6 weeks. He missed 19 games, but that's quote unquote only a fourth of the season for the Nuggets. And if, so for Darryn Peterson, that would be 7 games or something like 4 weeks or a month is, could be a higher percentage of the games is my point here. I'm not doing a very good job explaining it, but just the fact that the college basketball season is so much shorter, a hamstring injury where you sit out potentially 6 weeks is such a higher percentage of your games than an NBA season, unless you hit the All-Star break in there or something like that.
No, it's absolutely true. I've been thinking about this a lot as well. It feels like people are a little bit frustrated because they know that every game in college basketball, every game just means a lot more than it does in the NBA. And that's an indictment of the NBA schedule in a lot of ways too, in all honesty. But it does mean a lot more, especially now that we're in conference play, especially now that Kansas does not have any margin for error.
And also because, it's not like Kansas is like, hey, we're the number 1 team with Darryn Peterson. If we drop a few games, it's going to be okay. The Big 12 is a gauntlet, Sam, and they're already in tier 2 of the gauntlet.
Yeah, they play TCU on Tuesday, so the day that the show is going to come out. And Baylor just lost to TCU.
Yeah.
Right? TCU has also beaten Florida and Wisconsin this year.
Yep.
TCU has also lost to New Orleans, and Notre Dame beat them as well, and that was a good Notre Dame team when Marcus Burton was playing. But this is the team that can beat Kansas. I would say that Kansas is certainly the favorite going into that game with or without Darryn Peterson. And again, we don't know if Darryn's going to play in this game as of the time of this recording. But again, my thing is that from the jump on, what was it? Probably December 1st when he was still sitting out. I was like, just sit him until conference play. Don't do this. He might come back. He might not come back. Just give him all the time in the world and tell him hey, if we lose some non-conference games, it's okay. Let's get you healthy for later in the season. But this stop-starty nature just feels very funky to me. What it means for the number 1 overall pick race, I've talked to some folks around the league, and I think that everyone just wants to see him play before making any assessment on that, was my read.
And I think from this perspective, and selfishly for me, that's kind of been my biggest thing with multiple guys in the top 10 lottery, whatever. Like obviously the Peterson stuff. Michael Brown Jr. is a guy that, we haven't talked a lot about recently, and that's because he's been missing games. And, there was a report out that he recently had a setback as well. His, I think, was a lower back. Quaintance, I'm still kind of waiting for him to get his feet underneath him before I really evaluate him. And Braylon Mullins, we now have, 5 or 6 games probably, like he's finally got into it. But injuries my point here is injuries have played a part in multiple of these guys. Peterson, obviously the most well-known because he's in the mix with those top 3, but all 4 of those guys I just mentioned are at least lottery level talents and conversations. And all of them in some way have kind of haven't hurt themselves. It's hindered the ability to evaluate them because of substantial injuries and then working themselves back in. I'm not saying it's ultimately going to hurt them, but I just feel like my evaluations have been hindered because of these things. So he's not the only one that has, had to deal with something.
Let's shout out one of our sponsors. Let's go to Harry's. Shout out to our friends over at Harry's. We've all been there before. Shaving with razors that get dull too quickly. You don't realize it until it's too late, and you end up with an irritated neck despite having spent $30 to refill 8 razors for something that fails after 2 uses. Harry's razors don't do that, and Harry's Plus especially doesn't do that. Harry's Plus is an advanced pivoting system to reach every corner of your face. It has a refined blade tech for a closer, smoother shave, and it has a weighted metal handle for added control and comfort. With Harry's Plus, you get a barbershop quality shave with German engineered blades. But the best part about Harry's is how affordable it is. Harry's owns their own world-class blade factory in Germany. There's no outsourcing, no middleman. Because they control the entire process from steel to shelf, they keep costs low. Harry's has launched their most advanced razor ever, and it's still cheaper than the Gillette Fusion 5. For a limited time, our customers and listeners can get the Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 a month, for only $10, at harrys.com/game theory. This set includes the all-new Harry's Plus razor, 1 refined 5-blade cartridge, a 2-ounce foaming shave gel, and a travel cover to protect your blades on the go. Just head to harrys.com/game theory. That's HARRYS.com/game theory to claim this offer. And after you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. harrys.com/game theory. Okay, Bryce, the second topic I want to talk about on this draft show, the point guard class is out of control.
It's real quick, Sam, before you give us the intro here. I told you I've been like taking notes on like potential draft conversation. This was the number one thing on my list. And so another thing on my list we're going to talk about next. We did not talk about this. You didn't ask me for this topic, but it was number one on my list as well. It's so important to talk about right now.
The point guard class is absolutely out of control in this draft. So right now, where I'm at on my top 100, which is coming on Wednesday. So This comes out on Tuesday. I have a top 100 board coming Wednesday. Right now, among players in my top 100, Kingston Flemings.
Yep.
Or really in my top 30, let's go with Kingston Flemings at Houston, Michael Brown at Louisville, Darius Acuff at Arkansas, Christian Anderson at Texas Tech, Bennett Sturts at Iowa. I wouldn't call Killian Torrey a point guard at Iowa State, but he's like a lead ball handler defender who's like an off guard. He's like a Lou Dort type, I guess is the way to put it. Then just outside of the first round for me, I have Tyler Tanner and Braden Smith, largely due to size reasons. Sergio Di Laria plays some point guard, here and there for Valencia. Milos Uzan at Houston as well. Silas DeMary is still a guy that I really like. Is a big guard who can do some things. Defensively, he's tough. Bruce Thornton at Ohio State. let's just kind of go with those guys, right?
Hold on, real quick.
Into Kobe Gillespie, KJ Lewis, Anthony Robinson, like Donovan Dent, like some of these other guys. But like, go ahead, Bryce.
You didn't mention Phylon. Was that on accident?
Oh, Phylon as well. Yeah, I just missed Phylon. Yeah,
okay,
I have Phylon in the lottery. So,
I was going to say, I love Phylon. So I was like, okay, we're going to have a real conversation here. But okay.
No, I Phylon as a lottery guy. Okay, so I just missed him on my list here. Okay. So I would say that is 1, 2, 3, 4 point guards I have in my top 15, plus 2 more I have in my top 20 right now.
Yep.
That feels pretty wild. And I do wonder on some level, like, is that just where the class is taking us? Or is that wrong? Because look, we talk a lot about the fact that like backup point guard play in the NBA is probably not good. And like there aren't enough good backup point guards going around in the NBA, right? Guys who can initiate the offense, get teams into sets, get teams into actions, everything like that. But also, we always talk about size being an issue, right? And you want bigger players out there on the court at the end of the day in the NBA. Michael Brown's like 6'4", but very skinny. Kingston Flemings is listed at 6'4". I'll be interested to see what he comes in at. Bigger physical dude. I think, if he's actually 6'4", could work. LeBaron Phylon was sub 6'3" without shoes last year. 175 pounds. Christian Anderson is 6'2", listed at 180. Again, we'll be interested to see what he comes in at. I'll be interested to see what Michael Brown comes in at too, by the way. Height wise, I don't want to just like throw him away and make him obviously like immediately 6'4". Bennett Sturts, 6'4", 190, very slight. Probably will be somewhere between 6'3" and 6'4", I would guess, without shoes. Darius Acuff, I'm guessing going to be like 6'1" without shoes, right? But he is like bigger and physical. Tyler Tanner is another guy that I've talked about a lot on the show already. I love Tyler Tanner, but 5'11" without shoes, 5'10", 7'5" is what Fink told us from when he got measured last summer. 6'4", 6'5" wingspan. Forget what Fink said. So length, but very skinny again as well. Does this make sense for where the NBA is going? Or are we just getting excited because the point guards across college basketball have played so well that we need to have them this high at the end? Like, where do we fall on this blend of where the NBA is going, which seems to be away from guys that are 6'3" and shorter, versus like the talent that these guys very clearly possess, and kind of balancing those two aspects of this?
So the first thing I will say is I think the ones that we both have, we have the same names in the first round. I think those guys are just right on the edge when we talk about smaller guards, right? So like, it's not the Rob Dillingham conversation where both you and I had him much lower than the consensus and much lower than where he got drafted, right?
Yeah.
So these guys are all bigger than that, I feel like.
I will say, like, Phylon is like an inch and a half bigger than what Dillingham is, or 2 inches bigger or whatever. He's like 175 pounds.
He's not stronger. That's fair. That's fair.
Thin.
Here's the other thing I would say is Phylon, to me, one, he's in his second year, so this is different, but Phylon has shown way more defensively than Dillingham showed. Totally. And 100%. I think just like the nuance of the way he plays the game and the use of his left hand, and I don't tweet out things very often of like outside of just like, hey, we're about to record stuff. I had a Phylon eye manipulation that was so sick. Like I just couldn't not. Like I thought people would appreciate it because it was so sick and so practical. So
and like Darius Acuff, like again, strong. I'm guessing. Yeah. So like he's listed at 6'3". I don't know. When I watch him, he doesn't look like he's going to be 6'3" without shoes, right?
I would agree with that. I think.
But he's physical. Like he's very strong. That dude is powerful. Like he moves guys backward on his drives. Like when he moves forward, guys go backward at the end of the day on his drives.
For what it's worth, I have something from here's it's from October 2024, but he was essentially 6'1.5" without shoes. I mean, that's 18 months ago now. So obviously guys can get taller and all of that, but just to play into this a little bit. So I think they're right on the brink. I think these guys are really good. Like here's the problem for me is I want to lean into the fact of NBA teams are going to want wings and bigger players and the Cade Cunningham type, size of primary initiators. And then I watch Flemings and Phylon, and I watched the A-Cuff game this morning and Christian Anderson. And I'm just like, these dudes are awesome. And for the most part, like which one of these guys, like of those first round guys, which one has the biggest question in terms of shooting, like 3-point shooting? Like, is there any of those you're just like, man, I really don't know if he's going to be able to shoot?
Yeah, I would say Flemings right now to me, if only just because the sample continues to be quite low. Like he doesn't seem to take a lot of them. The mechanics look funky, kind of everything.
And I think that's fair, Sam. But even with that said, and I'm not like trying to discredit this, he's at 44% on 3 attempts per game, again, to your sample, and 78% from the free throw line. I think my point here is that's not necessarily like a major question mark, big picture with a lot. Like Phylon has really answered that this year, right? Like that was last year didn't necessarily shoot it great.
Big question. And it was a big question for A-Cuff entering the year.
Correct.
He's doing what he can to answer it right now as well. Christian Anderson and Sturts, both good shooters as well.
Yeah. And so because of that, those guys can play. Like my point is there's a little bit more versatility with their games because they show some of that ability. Now, I can't say that all of these guys are good defenders because that is not true, right? Like there are real defensive questions with some of them. And so like, I
want to talk about the versatility aspect as well, because I don't know how much I agree with all of that either, but continue.
And so like, my point is then I wonder if like, when we really get into the defensive aspect of things, like, do we start, do guys end up dropping on the board a little bit? And then I do wonder, like, have some of these wings just not played well enough yet?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, is it the case of, for me, Sar was a guy I thought was going to be really good in a first round pick, and it just hasn't been there yet. Yesefu was a guy that I think was a lottery pick at one point. Probably not going to end up there now. Nate Amintz at Tennessee was a guy that was top 5 on some boards at one point. Just hasn't had that type of season so far.
No, yeah. So Darius A-Cuff over the weekend just obliterated that guy off the court.
Yeah, I watched that game with my eyes on 2 players, a little bit of Malik Thomas, and came away loving A-Cuff more offensively at least, and less, I barely noticed Amen. So my point is, I wonder if at some point some wings and some bigs are able to make up some ground. You mentioned Gungba, Steinbach at Washington is a guy.
Steinbach's the big name, and then Keaton Wagler's the big name for me.
Keaton
Wagler very high.
Dalen Swain is a guy at Texas that had a big game on Saturday as well. I don't know how far those guys can get, but eventually do you just say like, hey, Dalen Swain looks like an NBA wing, has improved his ball skills, defends. I actually am taking that over Bennett Sturts because I would rather
Cam
have
Carr over Darius A-Cuff because Cam Carr fits the off-ball archetype more in terms of the way he plays versus A-Cuff, who's like very on ball.
Sure.
And that's what I want to talk about, the versatility.
Okay, sure.
Because the ability to play on the ball in the NBA, your level has to be through the roof.
Sure.
To get on ball reps consistently in the NBA and dominate the ball.
Can I give a real quick example to prove this?
Yeah.
Jaden Ivey gets very little on ball reps with the Detroit Pistons right now. And that was a top 5 pick. And this game just finished. And when it wasn't Cade Cunningham, it was like Dennis Jenkins or Marcus Sasser. And so just an example, you have to have your game to a certain point or you don't get those reps.
Well, and Colin Sexton is another one, right?
Sure.
Colin Sexton has gotten a lot of on-ball reps in the NBA and is a guy that averages 19 points a game in 29.5 minutes per game, over the course of his career. This year he's averaging 15 points per game and 24 minutes a night, like half starting, half coming off the bench for the Hornets, depending on if LaMelo is playing. In his 2 years in Utah, prior to this year, he was at 18 and a half points per game, shooting 48, 40, 86. And he's still probably not quite good enough to be on the ball in the NBA because of his vision and because of like the way that the overall kind of offense flows with him, largely because the vision isn't quite good enough with him. If you're going to be like extremely on the ball in the NBA, you have to be absurdly good, both as a scorer or as a passer, or in the case of like Tyrese Maxey or someone like that, right? Like you have to be basically the best scorer in the world, right? Or, something along those lines, something approximating those lines. Like I would argue Maxey's vision is not incredible, but his speed is such that he collapses the defense so often that he's able to create 7 assists per game just by collapsing the defense in the way that he is.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
I would say that Flemings has been interesting this year off the ball, attacking, when guys close out on him heavily. He understands like the threat of his athleticism. Him playing off of Uzan, I think, has worked generally pretty well. Michael Brown, like we've seen him play off the ball before in U19 stuff, like playing next to AJ Debinsa. His shooting is just such a weapon. I know that he hasn't shot the ball well this year, but like we have such a long sample of Michael Brown being a monster shooter that I would imagine that will turn at some point this year. LeBaron Philon, played off the ball next to Mark Sears last year, right? Like mostly. He played some on the ball, some off the ball, but Sears had the ball in his hands for the most part. Has now shown that he can play both on and off the ball in a consistent way that is really good.
And plays off Aiden Holloway at times, even this year. At times.
Yeah. The other three, like Christian Anderson, Bennett Sturts, and Darius Acuff. Acuff just like dominates the ball for Arkansas to such a level that I want to learn more about his off-ball play. Sturts is hard because in theory he should be a great off-ball player, but when he's off the ball, it feels like because he plays 40 minutes,
he's resting.
That McCollum is using those like off-ball reps as active rest minutes, like Bryce 100%. Said.
Yeah.
So like it's a little bit more complicated to evaluate. Like, okay, does he have the like movement instincts and like relocation instincts and everything off the ball to like make it work? We'll find out. My guess is yes, but we don't know that. And then Christian Anderson like dominates the ball pretty aggressively as well. Texas Tech. I would say he even did that a little bit with like the German youth national teams as well. I think the difference for me with some of these other guys that I've like rated a little bit higher is that they have proven the ability to play off the ball a little bit more consistently. Whereas Acuff, I know that people get really excited about the box score numbers and everything, and they should. Like he's been awesome, and I have begrudgingly ended up with Acuff like at the back end of the lottery right now. I do worry about how on ball he is in an NBA. Like it reminds me a lot of very physical Colin Sexton.
Okay.
When I watch Darius Acuff. And that, like, again, Colin Sexton's averaging 19 points a game in his NBA career and has been awesome. Like if that's an outcome for Darius Acuff's going to make over $100 million in his career and is going to have like an awesome time. And I would guess that if you went back, I haven't done this recently, but if you go back to, what would that be? The 2018 draft where Sexton went? Yeah, 2018. I would guess that he would go in the lottery still in terms of like production and everything in the 2018 class, but it would be close and he wouldn't go 8th overall. He'd probably go more toward the back end of the lottery. So if you told me like Darius Acuff is a more physical version of Colin Sexton, I can buy that as returning lottery value, I think, is where I'm at. And maybe there's upside for more because of the physicality that I'm, wondering about at the end of the day. But the guys that tend to work in the NBA right now are either like the hyper elite shooters or the like super speedy fast guys or the wildly explosive guys. Acuff doesn't really fit. And by that, I mean like the hyper all-star class of guys, right? Not the, Colin Sexton plus guys that are starting caliber point guards. I mean, the guys that like really hit a ceiling. I haven't seen that yet from Acuff, but I think Acuff can be like a starting caliber point guard in the NBA and can be really productive and valuable. I don't know. He's the one I'm struggling with the most, to be honest with you, because he has been so good this year and I respect so much about what he's done offensively. Defensively, he's awful and it drives me insane. But offensively, he is so gifted and so talented and is such a real shot maker and has a real in-between game with that nasty floater game that he has. Like, he has counters against the way you present defenses to him. And I keep kind of hemming and hawing on, well, does this work? Exactly. Like, does this work at a level that has all-star guard upside? Or is this stronger Colin Sexton kind of vibes to me? And again, like, both outcomes are good. Both outcomes result in Darius Acuff making 9 figures in his career. It's just one is worth a top 10 pick and one is worth somewhere between 11 and 17 to me.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a huge Acuff guy coming in, and he just slowly moved up my board. The one thing I will say is I agree, I think, in general with the guys in terms of how you outlined off the ball stuff. The one thing I will say with Acuff is every game I've watched, I have at least a note about something he does off the ball. Now, does that mean you can do it for multiple possessions and multiple minutes in a row? I don't know, but it's nice off-ball relocation, another nice relocation, doing enough just off the ball, tremendous off-ball screen read to start the second half, makes the shot. So, like, I'm not saying the sample size is enough, but there's been enough, small sample or individual possessions where I'm like, okay, that's interesting, where now I can play him next to player X, and now I can have him run off a screen, read it correctly, and flare for the catch and shoot three, right? So I think my bigger thing with these guards specifically is, and why I've been slow to move Tyler Tanner or Braden Smith higher than what I have them in general, is like, how many of these guys can go in the first round? How many teams are going to be, how many of these guys can we really take, including Darryn Peterson in this conversation? Can you take Peterson, Flemings, Philon, Brown, and Acuff all in the lottery, let alone the top 10, where some people think all of those guys are top 10 talents? Like, are there going to be 10 teams in the lottery, or excuse me, are there going to be, what would that be, 5 teams, whatever it is, in the top 10 that need that
point guards?
Yeah, that want point guards over, okay, well, maybe we just need the wing athleticism in Cameron Carr, or what Yaxel Lindenborg brings, or the shooting of Braylon Mullins, or, insert player that's not one of these guys. Like, that's why our first mock draft that is team specific is always eye-opening to me, because then I end up with, oh man, like, this guy may not be this high come true mock drafts, because like, there's just not enough teams to take that position.
And can we finish on this point, and then we'll move to your final topic that we want to do? I saw someone on the internet, and I quote tweeted it, and it's a totally fair question, I think. Bring up the idea with Tyler Tanner particularly. And I think some of these other guys, like, it absolutely comes into play as well. Why does Tyler Tanner being 6 foot matter if he rebounds, blocks shots, and dunks like a 6'5" guy? And I actually think that's like a completely reasonable question, especially with Tanner, who is this like awesome athlete who is super smart on the court and is very twitchy and does play greater than his size. I think Braden Smith plays greater than his size as well, by the way. He also has like a 6'5" wingspan from what I understand too. The problem is more, it's not what they do when they're on the ball. It's not even a lot of the time what they do when they're guarding like point of attack or anything like that in the NBA. It's what do they do in help defense and how can they cover ground in the NBA? NBA offenses are like incredibly advanced at putting 6 foot tall guys in 1-on-2 situations on the backside, or they're very advanced at making these small guys the low man in, coverages, right? Why does that happen more than it does in college? It's because everybody in the NBA can either provide like immense rim pressure because they're 7 foot tall or whatever, or they can all shoot now is the reality, right? Like unless you're Josh Okogie or whatever. But if you're Josh Okogie, or if you're, somebody like that who doesn't really shoot all that well, teams are still going to put you in the corner. So even if you put a Tyler Tanner on a Josh Okogie, that guy's still going to end up being the low man a lot of the time. And that's going to be disadvantageous for your defense at the end of the day, because Tyler Tanner can block shots like he's 6'5" and can do some of these things. But like, it's just a lot of ground to cover, going from tagging the roll man out to the corner, potentially having to be responsible for a guy out on the wing when you just aren't that big at the end of the day in the NBA. Like Keontae George this year, God love him. Like, he's playing way harder on defense than he ever has. And Keontae George is 6'3" with a 6'6" wingspan. And he still isn't really big and explosive enough to like cover the ground on the backside. Like Jalen Brunson really struggles with this for the Knicks, right? Yeah. Like you can get guys like, I would argue Tyrese Maxey struggles with this stuff, even at his size in the NBA, despite being one of the fastest guys in the NBA.
Marcus Sasser is a guy that came out of Houston with somewhat of a defensive reputation that doesn't make a ton of impact outside of the occasional point of attack disruption.
Right. So you can say that guys play bigger than their size, and that can be very true in terms of the way that they hit the box score, like on the ball and everything. But the main worry for me on in these situations is because basically everybody can initiate an offense now in the NBA. Like, you have 4 guys that can initiate an offense, and you have bigs who can like run dribble handoffs, play at the high post, everything like that. And because everybody shoots or puts immense pressure on the rim, there's just a ton of space and ground to cover, and there's just a ton to deal with across the court in the NBA and help defense. And that's where these guys who are very undersized get victimized the most in the NBA.
My other thing with Tanner is like, unless he ends up as a top 20 guy, like I see some people have him,
he's gonna go back.
Correct. Like that was my first time I watched him. Like, okay, he's
Tyler
only a
Tanner's
sophomore.
$3 million.
He's going to get so much money in NIL to go back to school next year, whether it's there or in the portal. And it just, I don't think he can rise high enough on boards to get in a position. In my opinion,
I'm genuinely curious if Christian Anderson is going to get so much. Like, he's at Texas Tech, where like there is a ton of money at Texas Tech right now. Like, they are more than happy to pay to keep guys around. Like, there is not a lot going on in Lubbock from a pro sports perspective, right? So they are very happy to keep their guys around. Like, I'm wondering if Christian Anderson gets so much money to where it's like, well, I'm just staying at Texas Tech instead of going to be the 25th overall pick, because I'll make more money at Texas Tech next year than I will be being the 25th overall pick.
Sure. No, and so that's why I've hesitated a little bit, and maybe that's incorrect. But whereas Braden Smith, my point was also like, I just haven't watched as much Tyler Tanner, because it was like,
oh, Bryce, you're gonna love it.
No, I've watched some. No, I like him.
I like good.
Him. I just haven't like dove as deep as maybe some, because my first watch was like, this dude is really good. I just don't see how he ends up actually being in the 2026 draft, because he's going to make so much money in the portal, or maybe at Vanderbilt. Maybe Vanderbilt is able to pay him and keep him. So,
and they have done a great job with roster retention in terms of NIL stuff as well. Okay, Bryce, last 5 minutes of the show here.
Yep.
You had an idea that I'm curious about. You're like, it was just like a question that you threw out. I thought it was interesting.
No, so listen, I'm not trying to throw shade. I'm not trying to relitigate the Derek Queen trade and the Pelicans process and all of that. We've done it multiple times. I'm sure we'll bring it up again.
No need to do it again.
No need to do it, and especially right now. I just found myself going to Tankathon the other day, and I looked, and right now the number 1 pick odds go to the Indiana Pacers, and number 2, I should just say worst records, because that's not even the right verbiage. And then the second worst record is the Pelicans with that pick to the Hawks. So overall, my point was, at one point, the Pelicans could have owned what would right now be the 2 worst records in the draft lottery. Mm-hmm. And so my thought was, what would the conversation be right now if the Pelicans were in the driver's seat to potentially land the number 1 and the number 2 pick in the 2026 draft with this class and their current roster? Would we be like, hey, these two guys are a perfect fit to the roster? Would there be this like insane push to trade Zion Williamson because of it? Would there be a, hey, you could trade both of these picks and go get Giannis or this player or that player? Would it be trade one, keep the other? Like, I just, from a strategic standpoint, it just made me go, what do you do if you land the number one, number two pick, if you're the Pelicans with this roster in this draft?
So, and I will take this as if they would not have Derek Queen in the circle.
Yeah, because they could, because the whole idea, this is the part some people forget, and it's okay, but like they traded the Pacers their first round pick to get 23, which then also ended up going out to go get Derek Queen. So they ended up trading. At one point, they owned this Pacers pick going into game 7 of the finals, a few hours before, a couple days before, whatever it was. So at one point, they had both of these picks.
Yeah. And they traded this year's pick for number 23 because they wanted the current value, and then they moved number 23 and the future first for Derek Queen. Okay. So I took this question a different way whenever I prepped for it. So this is interesting now too. And I'm just kind of thinking on the fly about how I would go about this. Zion Williamson's been like quite productive recently, extremely productive recently, and has been very good on his own terms. I mean, they've lost, I think their last, what is it, like 6 or 7 games, but like they have been very, very, he has been very productive, and he has been productive in the ways that we've seen previously, where like he is living at the foul line. He's making free throws too, by the way. Powering his way to the rim consistently and averaging 27-6, 2.3 assists, 63% from the field, shooting 10 free throw attempts per game, right? My immediate reaction would be, if they had access to these 2 picks, is you just like move him at the deadline immediately. Now that he is, if you could sell him having value because of this run that he's been on, where he's been like pretty dominant at the rim again as a scorer, you do that. And honestly, I still think that's the answer. If I'm being like, I would still probably try and move Zion at the deadline and build around these guys that they have now. But my next answer would be like, who do you take? Let's say that you have access to 2 of the top 3. Let's do this 2 ways, right? And I think you could do this almost for any team. This is the way I took the question originally. It was not necessarily like Pelicans specific.
Oh, okay. You just thought in general.
If you were in the draft this year and you had access to 2 of the top 3 picks, what combination would you want to do?
Yeah, sure.
Would you want to do Darryn Peterson and AJ? Would you want to do Darren and Cam? Would you want to do AJ and Cam? And then also, like, let's say you had number 1 and number 5. What would you do? So I'll ask you that question. If you could pair any of these 2 guys together, who would you want to pair together in this class?
It's interesting. So my initial gut reaction is AJ and Cam. And I think and to be clear, AJ's my number 1. Darren is actually number 2 on my board right now. But it's like, I think I just like the idea of like AJ's athleticism, and then like Cam obviously not necessarily having that as much. And so I don't know, like almost like a thunder and lightning thing here between those 2 guys. But having not thought through it as much, I don't know that I love it. I wonder how much they end up in each other's way. Like that's my other thing that I was trying to hash out now, is it almost seems like Darren needs to be one of them. And then you go Darren, like, so in that case, then I would just go Darren and AJ, but that's just my top 2 guys. So that's kind of boring.
I don't have a great answer to this, to be honest. I love all 3 of these guys a lot. I would be so terrified that I would pick the wrong primary. I think that my answer right now would be, I would take Darren and Cam. I'm not certain on that though. I'm just genuinely uncertain.
I would struggle not to take AJ and that athletic. If I have 2 shots at this, I think AJ is going to be one of my 2 picks no matter what. Just because, like, if I get 2 shots at it, I'm taking I know people don't love it, but like I'm taking the ceiling, the athleticism. I'm taking a swing on that with one of the 2 picks, Sam.
I'm really coming around on AJ right now is like potentially my number 1 guy.
Okay.
Be honest with you. And
that's a big step for you. That's a big step for you.
Yeah, like the whole way. And it is because of the way he's gotten better from day 1 to like, days, let's call it like 60 or whatever of the season. If, we're just going to use days, right? Like 2 months into the year, I've seen a lot of improvement from him in really tangible ways that make me go, oh, so he's like really getting better and he's figuring this out like in impressive moments.
Yeah.
Right. And we'll do like a larger AJ thing. I might do AJ again on the Substack and kind of talk through this again. Maybe that'll be next week because I have a lot I want to go through this week already because I missed last week. But like, I'm very excited by what I've seen about AJ. But I think Darryn and Cam is like the best combo, like fit wise.
Yeah, I can see that
too.
Yeah.
I think my answer to Darryn and Cam. My second question to this would be: say you had 1 and 5.
Okay.
Who do you take?
So that's a little bit easier for me. I assume Caleb's not available at 5.
I'll give you access to anybody. I think there's a chance like Flemings or someone could go 4. So like I'll give you access to anybody.
Okay, so like the one I think I would like the most is AJ and Kingston. Like I would love that. And then if Caleb was going to be available at 5 and I knew that, then I might do Darryn and Caleb. But like kind of that way I'm like kind of mixing like a primary on-ball guy in some capacity with the wingy forward part. Like I'm listen, like
see, it's really funny. So like I just took Darryn and Cam in that conversation. If I had 1 and 5 and I knew Flemings was going to be there, I might take AJ and Flemings.
Yeah, that would be so much fun. That would be a blast.
How would you know that Flemings would be there? Like you'd have to have like the best intel.
Yeah, because here's the thing. Here's what would be interesting is if I take AJ at 1, I don't like, I'll take Caleb and just be crazy athletic, but I don't love pairing those 2 together. Like I don't love.
No, I don't either.
Just in general. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. I'm just saying I wouldn't love it. And so that's where it would be fun in terms of is Caleb going to be off the board? How much worse is Caleb, quote unquote, than AJ? You know, all of that. Like just when you're talking about pairing those picks together, it is a lot of fun because you get some different players involved there.
Yeah. Like if I knew that I was going to get Flemings, I might take AJ and Flemings. If I didn't know that, I might take Darryn or if like I thought that Caleb was going to be the one to fall to 5.
Sure. Yeah.
I might go Darryn and Caleb.
Yeah, I like that.
The pairing though is fun. We'll have that conversation again as we get closer to the draft. That's the way I took the question originally, and I really liked the question.
Yeah,
and I was like, yeah, this is smart. This is good stuff, Bryce.
Yep.
Okay. None of these decisions have to be made now. We're just starting conference season. What an unbelievable start to conference basketball or conference play in college basketball over on Saturday. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
At Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky, Motor City Hoops Substack. If your favorite team plays the Pistons, I'll have notes over there. Game Theory Substack, where I finally did something. I don't know. I really enjoyed that one. I broke down the Tyrese Maxey, Joel Bell, Embiid 2-man game. I will try to get some more NBA draft stuff as well. And then, of course, the Game Theory podcast right here with Sam Vecenie.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. You will have a top 100 board tomorrow. I promise. It's happening. Go there and, subscribe and do everything you can to support that show. I will have a bunch of stuff on the Substack, gametheorysamv.substack.com. There's been stuff that's already gone up this week, including, I believe Darryn Peterson and Darius Acuff have already gone up. That's what we got. That's where we're at this point. So I appreciate everybody for coming through. This is the first show of 2026 because I got very ill, unfortunately. We promise we will be back on Friday. I would assume I'm not going to get sick again this week to where I am unable to record. So we will be back on Friday. I can just about guarantee it. We appreciate everybody for coming through. Hit the subscribe button. We're up over like 88,000 subscribers now. It's an insane bonkers number that we don't really understand. But thank you all for coming to hang out. We'll be back later this week. But until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.